Well, yesterday marked the start of the Ravenel ADAC 24 hours of the Nürburgring qualifiers. However, less than an hour into our opening race of the weekend, the unthinkable happened. And we lost Juha Mettinen. While many will remember him for his 53 starts in the last 7 years around the Nordschleife, 5 wins and yes, 25 class podiums, what his friends, teammates and family will remember him by was his smile, his passion for the Nürburgring and for Porsches, and for racing around this wonderful track in a BMW Stock 325. And so today we race for Juha as we finalize our preparations ahead of next month's 24-hour race. Arjuna Kankipati in the Global Broadcast Center, live on RS1 in sound and in vision around the world on a whole host of channels. Glad you're joining us. My name, Arjuna Kankipati, alongside, though, of Neil Cole. And Neil, this is meant to be the dress rehearsal in many ways, and part of that dress rehearsal means not only dialing in the processes for the race, but also for top qualifying.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Guten Tag. Hello, Arjuna. Great to see and hear you again. Yeah, heavy hearts this morning, but of course everyone has to go out. The motorsport community has rallied around, and I know that a few of the drivers have spoken passionately and emotionally this morning about what it feels like to go out racing again after losing a friend and a competitor. So they're putting that to one side for now because they have a job on their hands. You're right, they have to try and qualify for the race in a couple of hours' time, but also get everything dialed in for the big one, 24 hours next month. So plenty for these drivers to think about as we start to get some laps on a drying track here at the Nordschleife.
And when we talk about, you know, the preparations today, you talk about the weather. I was just looking through the opening 90 minutes that we've already had of qualifiers for the entirety of the 121 strong field that we have entered here on Sunday. A couple of cars not making it over from yesterday, courtesy of some incidents, of course, but only about 20 or so of them are going to be a part of this top qualifying. It's part of something that only traditionally happens during the 24-hour weekend. This, of course, is still part of the regular NLS schedule, but we run the slightly longer Grand Prix loop. We cut out the Mercedes-Benz Arena, and we'll send out 20-odd drivers with 2 laps and that drying track. Last year, when we had our top qualifiers on our qualifiers weekend, that's a mouthful of a statement, we did have some changing conditions, and some teams and drivers did elect to head down to pit lane. And part of the reason why, Neil, is something that makes NLS and racing around the Green Hell so fascinating. The fact that we have tire wars, and so many options are available to the teams. You've got the regular slick tires, inters, wets, all the different things that the teams and manufacturers, the OEMs, will work together to try and give themselves some options. But because you've got open tire rules, you can even go and cut some grooves into slick tires if you think that's a slightly better option. All sorts of things available to the engineers and drivers to play with.
Yeah, and it's you know, it's not a simple process, because this, as we heard from Christopher Haas, had a bit of an off-track excursion. The number 16 Audi R8 LMS GT3 couldn't get the tires to work, and they slid into a tire barrier. So there is still plenty, because they're not on a standard single tire manufacturer. It can work in your favor because you can still employ different techniques, but it doesn't necessarily work in your favor because you still have to be able to employ those different techniques.
Cars are forming up on the start-finish straight, where they will be released one by one in 15-second intervals for a warm-up lap. That includes the full loop around the Green Hell as well, and then 2 timed attempts as our 5-minute board gets waved. For those wondering, I have to answer the question already. No, Max Verstappen will not be qualifying the number 3 Mercedes-AMG Team Verstappen Racing GT3 SP9 entry. However, his teammate Lucas Auer will. I think what that probably means, Neil, is Max will get a bit more running towards the end of the race, and we'll see Lucas Auer qualify and probably start the car as well.
Yeah, so a direct quote from Max Verstappen. He says, "This is an important weekend for me to support Lucas a bit. He's had the least time in the car of all of us so far, so it's important to get him up to speed within the group. The car is working really well." So Lucas was in the car when the race was red flagged yesterday evening. So Max didn't get a chance to drive in the dark, which was one of the key reasons with the cancellation of the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix, that he is here this weekend. But Lucas needs a bit more seat time as well, because of course he wasn't in the car when they raced in LS earlier in the season. So it's a real balance. And so Lucas is in this top qualifying session, and then they will obviously share the driving in NLS 5 later today.
Quickest in our qualifiers earlier today was Nicky Thiem in one of our Aston Martins. He'll be heading out there for Trinity Solutions as the first of the runners. And why is that important? Well, because around a lap like this, if there are, issues for those cars and they pull to the side of the track, that might bring out a yellow flag, a slow zone potentially, and you'll still be allowed to finish the lap that you're on. But, ultimately, Neil, that really compromises you in qualifying. It could see you start a lot further back than your pace may actually have warranted.
Yeah, and of course, if there's people joining us that aren't used to this format of racing, or specifically the Nürburgring Nordschleife, obviously qualifying is important, track position is important, but once the race is underway, it's a long circuit, and the key thing to remember is that, unlike in even a standard endurance race or a Grand Prix situation, a gap of 10 seconds can be nothing. 30 seconds can be nothing at the end of a 4-hour race. So yes, qualifying is very important, and nailing the fastest lap you possibly can around this extraordinary circuit, which is evolving because it was damp earlier. It still will be quite slippery in places, and there are grey clouds looming in. But they do, once the race is underway, you're in for the long haul. It's a proper endurance race on this extraordinary 25-mile circuit.
And the starting field split up into 3 groups. The gap between the groups is about 5 minutes. It means that the first group gets 1 lap, and by the time they finish, they have already caught up to the back of group number 3, and traffic becomes a ever-present reality. So as much as, yes, qualifying may not seem like the most important, when you start jinking your way through traffic, the most ideal spot is always to be at the front. We are moments away, though, from seeing the green flag, and it's not just the fastest SP9 cars that are eligible for this session. It is also including a handful of the SP Pro, SPX cars that are eligible, which means that you will see the BMW M3 Touring, the April Fool's joke that's turned to reality. You'll also see the glorious Mercedes Tribute HWA cars, and that is cars, multiple, Neil, that will be entered in this qualifying session. They'll be a bit slower than, yes, the rest of the field, but I think we are expecting the BMW M3 Touring to potentially challenge towards the front.
Yeah, they're not just here to show off a cool, funny idea. They're really quite competitive, and of course the KTM Crossbow in the SPX class as well. So many different storylines to keep an eye on, and we'll try and cover as many of them as possible. But we are merely seconds away from the green flag to wave on qualifying, and crucial lap times, because obviously we missed a lot of lap time yesterday.
Preparation for the upcoming 24 hours of the Nürburgring, the Ravenel ADAC 24 hours of the Nürburgring, where top qualifying has been split into 3 for this year. And this session does play some part in maybe getting drivers into top qualifying automatically, but I think ultimately just surviving this weekend and putting yourself in the position to challenge next month is what they are all hoping for. 15-second intervals, as we mentioned earlier, so already Nicky Tim has fired off, as has Becariello in the Dunlop Motorsports Porsche, Vervish in the HRT Ford Racing Mustang GT3, and then Max Hesse for Roa Racing, the BMW M4 GT3 Evo. Remember, a full warm-up lap around the green hell, around the Nürburgring Nordschleife for them to get a sense for the conditions, because it has been around 45 minutes since our previous qualifying session came to an end, Neil.
Yeah, and worth flagging up just what an amazing entry list we have, and obviously quite a hefty contingent of the German manufacturers, inevitably, but we do have the Ford, Lamborghini, we have a Ferrari and Aston Martins, so it is a very competitive field. And the M3 Touring in the SPX class has a chance of pole. I mean, it's a realistic chance of mixing it up with the SP9s, the other GT3s. And that's the thing to remember, is the classes are called something specific here. So SP9 is GT3, SP10 is GT4, and SPX are the special entries. And we're hearing that there is rain, so those grey clouds have delivered Kesselken and Schwalbenschwanz.
So that's towards the sort of, I'll call it the top half of the track, for lack of a better term, about as far away from where the drivers are still sat on the start-finish line as one by one we get the warm-up laps underway. Haven't seen anyone dive to pit lane yet, and that's crucial because clearly, as far as my eyes can see, I am halfway around the world, but our picture's quite good from the team at Nürburgring TV. Does seem to be slick tires for everybody that has fired off so far. And so while they can, yes, come back down to pit lane at the end of this lap if they feel like maybe a change of compound is warranted, what that would do is, if I remember correctly from reading the regulations, mean that they sacrifice one of their timed attempts, and they would have to loop back around to begin their lap. Great to see, by the way, Grello back on the grid this qualifier weekend. Last year for top qualifiers in the ADAC 24 Hours of the Nürburgring Qualifiers weekend, they actually missed the start of top qualifying, had a small issue, prevented them from rolling out in time, and at least this time they'll get this opportunity to head out. Neil, I was really excited when I found out that you and I were going to be on the call for top qualifying, because it really does put the pressure and the onus on the driver to go out there, especially in these changing conditions, and make the most of it.
Yeah, pressure's on. Absolutely, pressure's on. And the talking about the Grello, I mean, that car qualified in 12th yesterday, so, you know, they'll look to move up a little bit, but that's with Thomas Preining at the wheel. The Porsche 911 Manthey Racing Grello. Yeah, great to see that back up and running. But I think it's important to reiterate that there is so much pressure on, because so many of these cars did not get the full chance to stretch their legs, test everything, and most of the drivers didn't get a stint. You know, at least half the field, if not more, didn't get a chance to drive yesterday after our tragic accident. So even more crucial to get seat time today, and especially for Max Verstappen, who will be in the number 3 Mercedes-AMG GT3 when the race gets underway. But of course, at the moment, it's Lucas Auer at the wheel of that car.
And he's just sent it off the line to begin his warm-up lap as well, as slowly but surely the start line is becoming more and more empty now. It's the Audi for Scherer Sport. That's going to fire off with Christopher Haase. Remember, he had a great fight with the Verstappen Racing Mercedes back at NLS 2 and really did show what that Audi is capable of. I'm not one who necessarily likes to focus too much on BOP, but it's been good to see start of this 2026 NLS campaign that we've had a fair variety of manufacturers in the mix, and well, we'll see. Slightly different addition to the BMW M racing lineup, but the BMW M3 Touring is off and away with Neil Verhagen at the wheel. Very, very quick young driver, so we'll see what he's going to be able to do. Neil, are my eyes deceiving me, or are those grey clouds becoming more grey as the start line continues to empty?
Yes, it's definitely darkening around. I think we've probably got a considerable downpour incoming. And the thing, you know, for those of you, many of you listening and watching will have been to the Nordschleife, will have been to the Nürburgring, and you know that as you drive around, it is enormous. Remember the scale of this circuit. It is not like any other circuit in the world. When we were in the build-up to the race yesterday, John was talking about the fact that the World Touring Cars raced here, and an entire race was 3 laps. So this is a huge circuit. It goes through the forests of Adenau and Eifel, and it has several microclimates within it, so it's very rare that you'll get a uniform weather for the whole circuit, and it's, you know, the weather you have at the start is very different from the weather right at the top of the carousel. So I think that we are going to get a bit more rain, but it won't necessarily be something that you can predict for the entire circuit. Look at that. Look at that car.
The HWA wriggles out of the Yokohama S. Remember, we are running the layout of the track that will run next month. It's not the traditional NLS layout, so a slightly longer Grand Prix loop. Yes, even though we don't use the entirety of the Mercedes-Benz arena, all the way down towards the Dunlop hairpin at the very bottom of the Grand Prix track before you start the climb, finish up the back half of that Grand Prix loop before you turn left on the Sabine Schmidt curve and begin the run through the famed Nürburgring Nordschleife. I do get that feeling, though, that if we are sensing a bit of rain on the horizon, we may end up seeing some drivers back down towards the pit lane once they have sighted out the track already through Sector 6 for Nicky Team, who fired off first, and so that means that he has gotten to where we think the rain has started, right around that Kesselchen area, so he'll be the first tiptoeing his way through and getting a good sense for the conditions right now. But remember, 2 timed attempts, and they do all have to run, Neil, at full race fuel. So they've not lightened the car up and made it super pointy for qualifying. It's just the same race car that they're getting the most of. Oh, big moment for the Dunlop Motorsports Porsche. That is up at Bravery at the Muttkurve, and he has slid into the wall.
Just an example there exactly of what we're talking about, how unpredictable the conditions are, and in the slick tyres, Alessio Picariello, they're finding the barrier. So while some of the track is in bright sunshine and a drying track, some of it is clearly very slippery, especially under the trees where even when it hasn't rained for a couple of hours, the slick surface has not had a chance to dry out yet, because it's not particularly warm here either.
And you can actually see as the drivers finishing up their lap crest the end of the Dottinger Hoa, the gaps have actually kind of shrunk. I would have expected them to maybe enlarge slightly as drivers look for some positioning, but I would argue that still building up tire temperature is one of the Ferraris. I think that would be the Condor Racing machine, but no, not many. In fact, none have elected to come down towards the pit lane. They all feel confident enough with the track conditions, and so they will fly around the track. Already Nicky Team has punched in the first sector of a 48.52 to open up the scoring. And one by one, our top qualifying session is officially underway.
Nicky Team qualified 11th for the race yesterday, so looking to do better in the Aston Martin, the Trinity Aston Martin.
Using a bit of the curb on the descent down on towards the back straight on the Grand Prix part of the track. That shows that there's still enough grip and no moisture on that part. Then through the faster Vidal chicane as Nicky team balances that grey and yellow, the highlighter yellow. Aston Martin dances all the way up to the wall on the entry down in towards the Nordschleife and now drops himself into the Hadsenbach. Nicky, such a aggressive driver, but I don't mean that to be negative about his driving style. He is just all attack and his personality as well. Remember at Daytona earlier this year where he's fighting for a Rolex with the Windward Racing Mercedes of Philip Ellis. They made contact at some 250 odd kilometers an hour on the banking, and Nicky not one to back down. Unfortunately finished second in that race, but so much storied aggression through his time. Very dry as he begins to climb up towards Flugplatz though. Yeah, fully committed there. It's incredibly brave to be that committed with just the unknown grip levels. So always impressive, Nicky team. Sven Müller was working his way through the Sabine Schmidt curve. Meanwhile, looks like a puncture on the right front for the number 17. So that will be the lasting damage for the Dunlop Motorsports Porsche. Alessio Picariello is going to limp it back to pit lane. He's not the only one in the pit lane. Timing screen has just popped up a note as Picariello is going to try and now have to nurse his way back around the Grand Prix loop. Fred Vervisch is also sat in pit lane, but there's a Falcon Tires liveried Porsche that's the wrong way around in the Hadsenbach. Yeah, that is fully facing the wrong way. So one thing that we have to flag up for those of us joining this series for the first time, we will probably see slow zone 60. So yellow flags in the approach to Hadsenbach. And the safety vehicles will come in and retrieve that stricken car while the cars continue to circulate, but they have to slow down for that section. So Vervisch is in the pits. Fred Vervisch in the and getting the radiator cleaned off. The tires, they're inspecting the left front, but I'm not seeing any wet tires standing by. Meanwhile, for Sven Müller in that Falcon Porsche, seems to have ripped, I don't think that's the splitter off the car, but there's maybe diffuser that's lying on the track itself. And yeah, this is exactly what, Neil, I was actually mentioning earlier, right? Where, you know, if you're at the front of the qualifying queue, if someone has an issue, you're not going to get caught out with one of those yellow flags and have to give up time. Nicky team, pedal to the metal, is running his way towards the rain as he works towards Bergwerk right now in the climb up towards the Kesselchen and Mutskurve area. Yeah, so critical to get a fast lap in if you can before there's an incident, because there'll be plenty of qualifying laps that will be compromised by that Porsche in the barrier. There's another yellow flag somewhere else on the track, down at Ravenel. Not quite sure. It was very quick, and a green flag is now back there. Slow zone officially, though, now at the Hadsenbach, so you will have to drop your speed to 60 as Sven Müller is now out of the car and standing rather forlornly on the wrong side of the Armco. And you can see the frustration is visible even halfway around the world, Neil. Yeah, it must be very disappointing for him and for the team just to not get in, no matter what minimal repair is required to that car once it gets back to the pit lane, but just not to get any track time now before the race later, presuming that car is going to be fine, which it looks like it will be, but just to not just to set a qualifying lap time, but also not get the running. The cost of that slow zone, by the way, seems to be anywhere from 6 to 10 seconds. I think that timing difference is probably because some approached it before it was a slow zone and some after, and so slight difference in the speed that was lost. Fred Vervisch is back out of pit lane, so whatever they were looking at on the left front. They're confident enough in the Haupt Racing camp to send that Ford Mustang back out as Nicky Thiem carves his way through. There's no question about it. The fun part of the Nordschleife, the lefts and rights almost present like a rally stage, but you don't need a co-driver. You've got them memorized here for top qualifying. Car will get into the air momentarily through Flansgarden if you're really brave, but then through the double right-handers down into the Stefan Beloff S's. You let the car breathe, you let the engine just run through the rev range here, and not far away from the almost 1.5 kilometer run out of Gaugenkopf and into the next braking zone. This is one of the few places on the track where, as long as you don't have traffic, Neil, you can take a quick breath, although the corners still come thick and fast until you get to the Dottinger Höhe.
Yeah, you've nailed it, really. There's only two places where you can really, you know, take a breath, stretch the shoulders, settle into the seat, and get ready for the next onslaught. This is such a roller coaster, and a long roller. And it's interesting that you use the rally stage. Obviously, for all of these drivers, the pace notes are in your head. You've done this on the simulator and at home thousands of times and hundreds of times in real life. But actually being here and feeling all the G-forces and the grip under your behind is quite a different thing. So yes, the chances to actually take a breath, assess everything on the car before you go again are very, very welcome.
I saw that great video of you and Sabine Schmidt, and it just jogged my mind when I was watching them carve around the lap up through the final complex, through Tiergarten for Nicky Thiem, who will punch in the first time. But I can already tell you some purple sectors from the Ferrari for Realized Condor Racing with Rinaldi. So it's a provisional benchmark of an 8:19.576. Can't really compare to traditional NLS benchmark, because again, remember, we are running the full Grand Prix loop just like we will next month. The grey cloud cover has lifted quite drastically, I will say, as the BMW for Row Racing now jinks out of the final complex and punches its way to the line. Find himself half a second off of the benchmark from Nicky Thiem, but Maximilian Paul for Conrad Motorsports in that Lamborghini, he finds half a second on Nicky Thiem, but those purple sectors come good. Thierry Vermeulen for Realized Condor Racing with Rinaldi. The Ferrari is 9 seconds to the good. But now, as we get the next time on the board, David Jahn for Gamotta Racing, 1,000 splits the top two after an incredible 25 odd miles.
Yeah, that is extraordinary. The 1,000th of a second between Jahn and Vermeulen is ridiculous. And in these conditions is extraordinarily close. And that Gamotta Racing, David Jahn put it on pole yesterday.
Now
so.
is now as the KCMG blue and white Mercedes comes to the line, they're still 7 seconds off. The Lamborghini for Red Bull Team Apps still 8 seconds off the time of Vermeulen. The Gamotta Racing BMW, I think we should also point out that that is a Pro-Am entry, Neil. That's a car that the pace will drop off eventually, but over one lap you can never count them out.
Yeah, all eyes on that. Has a very good chance of a win, regardless of the Pro and the Am in the name. But I think the Ferrari, the Condor Racing team, being that I'm pretty sure that there's the only Ferrari in the field, will be very keen to beat the German manufacturers at home. Good shout. Especially, you remember that, go back a couple of years through 24-hour history, the 296 has a good reputation of, you know, its engineering being designed for endurance racing. And I'm just diving through the entry list. You are quite correct. There is only one Ferrari in the field, which, you know, going back to, I don't like to talk about BOP, but it does make it a bit more difficult sometimes for the organizers to judge how to balance that car correctly. But again,
1,000 between it and the BMW. That's showing there's not much room more to be given. Grello breathes to the line and slips in front of one of its other competitors. That's one of the blue and orange Porsche 911 GT3Rs. But with only 13 times currently on the board out of 37 entrants in this top qualifying session, I don't think we'll see a time from Alessio Picariello. That car has not headed back out onto track. But for Grello, Thomas Preining's almost 12 seconds off the pace. So maybe what we're also seeing is this first time by a couple of drivers maybe not pushing full tilt, going back to what we were saying earlier, Neil, of making sure they get the running in throughout the entire 4 hours later.
Yeah, it's risk versus reward. You've got to balance it. And also, don't forget, I think the track is now clear, so they can stretch their legs a little bit around the circuit. But we were briefly on board with Lucas Auer, and that car, which will be shared with Max Verstappen later in the race, is currently in 27th position. So this next lap is crucial.
I got so excited about the 1,000th of a second difference that I forgot about the slow zone that some of these drivers did have to navigate through. So, yes, thank you for calling me out on that one. We'll see if we get more representative times the second time around. But if it was 8 to 10 seconds that we were seeing on timing earlier, then that translates pretty favorably for some of those teams that maybe did not get the best of runs. We are spread across many channels today. If you're watching in Vision on one of the many YouTube channels that have focused their attention on the Nordschleife this weekend, we're also, of course, live in audio for those traveling, RS1 and the Radio Show Limited suite of channels. So remember, if you are watching, that we are going to make sure that those listening have a great experience as well, and pictures are always better with words, is I believe the saying of our collective. It does mean, though, if you want to ask the booth anything, you can always go on social media at Arjuna Kanki Party. I'll be keeping an eye out for any questions you have, both here in top qualifying, but also later on in our 4-hour race when we get underway for the second of the 24-hour ADAC Ravenel qualifier races this weekend. It's also the 5th NLS round of 2026. So for some of the teams, there is some championship points at stake. Great time from Neil Verhagen in that BMW M3 Touring, though. 9.5 seconds off. So remember, if he had to navigate through the slow zone, that's putting him right around the threat of fighting for pole position.
Yeah, we called it right when we were introducing that car, and Verhagen has absolutely demonstrated what we were talking about. That car is in contention, regardless of its heritage and its evolution. And it looks like at the moment, don't quote me on this, but we have a clear track. So this lap for everybody at the moment has no slow zones. So we should hopefully get a representative time from all the cars that are currently in the process of setting their qualifying lap. So these times should now be representative across the board, and we can see some purple sectors springing up on the timing screen. So people, and it is dry, most of it is dry. Oh, I spoke too soon.
Neil Cole has just cursed into existence a yellow flag. There's one at Hadsenbach, and there's also one up at Hoa Ak. So those are two very different points of the track. This is a Mercedes stationary on the right side of the track through the Hadsenbach. This is just after you've dropped through the
I think it's Yuichi,
double left hairpins and the first right-hander.
Nakayama, I think that one is.
Good shout. He has not slipped through the next of these sectors just yet. The other yellow flag, though, up at Hoa Ak, that must be someone else. So we'll see if we can figure out between the two of us, put our brains together. Meanwhile, the HWA, or one of the two HWAs, I should say, jinx through the final corner. Boy, does it look glorious, and I can't wait to see it run for 24 hours. Hopefully, fingers crossed, next month. But we said it was not likely to challenge for pole position, and indeed the lap time at 8:58 for that compared to the 8:10 for our SP9 pole sitters. Very different sense of speed. Meanwhile, Fred Vervies has managed to work his way back around the Nordschleife, but as the checkered flag is flying on track, I wonder if he is going to get another opportunity. 8:28 might end up being his best time on the board.
So once again, these flying laps slightly hampered by the slow zone with that car stopped on track, but it is only a short slow zone, yellow flag, so only if a couple of seconds may be dropped, and it'll be, you know, the same across the board until it's cleared.
Did not see the reason as to why we had the yellow at Hoa Act, but it was cleared. We now have one down at Valvoline, but I believe that would be on the Grand Prix track, so I'm not too concerned about that. With the checkered flag now flying, Vermeulen back across the line. Does not find more time. He's almost 4 seconds off, so I do suspect that we may see some more drivers struggling. Of note, though, it was David Jan in that Gamotta Racing BMW. He was only 4/10 off the previous time, so clearly consistent speed in that Pro-Am SP9 machine. Very, very good signs. The checkered flag is now officially, though, flying. Let's not forget, for those that are completing their second of the timed attempts, it's Jesse Kroon that finds no improvement, 8:17.355, no higher than fourth on the board. Bit of improvement for the Lamborghini for the Red Bull team apt. The 84 jumps up to third with Luca Engsler at the wheel, but he's still 5 seconds off of those times from Thierry Vermeulen and David Jan.
So I wonder how much of a change we will see in that the sort of front 3 rows of the grid, because at the moment it's Vermeulen in the Ferrari, Jan in the BMW, Engsler in the Lamborghini, Paul in the Lamborghini, Kroon in the Mercedes, and Haase in the Audi is currently the front 3 rows of the grid. But there are a few purple sectors coming through, but not that many from the cars behind. So this could be a very mixed up grid thanks to the slow zones and yellow flags.
Confirmed, though, a couple of improvements. One for Tobias Müller in the 48 Loesch by Black Vulcan Mercedes. He jumped up to third, displaced the Lamborghini. Then Gabriele Piana for the Black Vulcan team EAE, the number 5, he jumped up the board as well. But now crossing the line in that yellow and black asymmetric Mercedes. What a lap time has just been punched in by Jamo Hartling for the Schnitzelam Racing crew. I believe I heard John and Neil having a conversation about that team yesterday. Is that the one which is the restaurant that only serves schnitzel, or am I dreaming?
Yeah, I think that was John's story yesterday. But that car, Jamo, that was on the front row of the grid for yesterday's abandoned race. So that's not a real surprise that they're up there.
No surprise to see improvements from the likes of Thomas Preining. Grello jumps up to third now, but still no one matches those first 2 times from the Realized Condor Racing Ferrari and the Gamotta Racing BMW. Final couple of cars will run their way towards the line. Remember, 37 in this top qualifying session, spread across SP9 and SPX. We are still waiting for the April Fool's joke turned reality for that BMW M3 Touring that we think could be fighting for pole position to make its way to the line. Still waiting for the 2 HWA SPX machines as well to cross the line for the second and final time in this session. Was some improvement from a couple. Timo Glock improved in the door McLaren. That was an 8:18.621, so he's jumped up to 15th on the board. But here comes Christopher Haase, one purple sector. And with race control reviewing something, remember these results will be provisional. Could the Audi for Sport have something to say at the very end of this top qualifying session? But very aggressively over the curbs at Tiergarten for Lucas Stoltz.
But that number 36 car, the BMW E89 Z4, they just can't catch a break. You know, they're currently under investigation. They went out yesterday and they've just had basically a full rebuild over the last few weeks. So they're under investigation for an incident, and this weekend, you know, needs to improve for that car.
Yeah, it's just not been a great run for another fan favorite in you know, many circles that I've seen. So much praise for the return of the BMW Z4 GT3 into this year's race. There was improvement, by the way, from Haase. He jumped to third. Adam Christodoulou found some time as well. Where is Neil Verhagen going to slot the wonderful BMW M3 Touring, though? He's just got the final corner to navigate his way through, and then we'll get the time on the board. Neil Verhagen with an 8:16.1660 black and white. Dazzling front end on that car, which in many ways is very much closer to a race-going BMW M4 GT3 than a traditional road car. It's only 5 and a bit seconds off of the pole position, but big smiles for Realized Condor Racing. David Perel very, very happy. Thierry Vermeulen has got it done by just 1,000th of a second. Couple more cars to come to the line, including the Pro Sport number 37, but no challenge for our pole sitters today, Neil.
Yeah, getting it done early was crucial, I think, for that Ferrari and for Realized Condor Racing. No mean feat as well to step out into the unknown. And just an update, now in 5th is Lucas Auer in the Winwood Racing Mercedes-AMG GT3, which he will share with Max Verstappen in the race in a few hours' time. So certainly in the front 3 rows of the grid, which is a very good, just 3 seconds off the pole time, which at the Nordschleife is nothing.
I think our coverage starts in just over an hour's time of that race, so we are inching closer to the 5th scheduled NLS round and the 2nd scheduled Ravenel ADAC 24-hour of the Nürburgring qualifier races. It's a bit of a misnomer, the name, in many ways. They aren't necessarily qualifying into the 24-hour race. There are opportunities for them, of course, as we mentioned earlier, to make it into the actual top qualifying session come the big weekend, but that's something that will be really only finalized after this weekend. It's a formula that the stewards have already worked through, and they'll plug in the results and get the teams locked in.
Yeah,
one of the HWA
important to flag that up.
Sorry, Neil.
Sorry, Arjuna. Important to flag up the fact that absence or presence from this weekend, despite the name of the Nürburgring 24 qualifiers, absence or presence this weekend does not denote absence or presence from the race itself next month. It's all part of the dark arts process to getting into that race.
I saw a post on one social media somewhere where someone allegedly from a team said, even we don't really understand how we get there. We're just going to get to the track and go fast.
Well, that makes me feel better.
There are people, don't worry, that do know exactly what they're talking about. Doesn't it? Well, that is top qualifying in the books. And like Neil said, getting it done early really has counted. And Thierry Vermeulen, as part of that Realized Condor Racing foursome, is going to, or threesome I should say, alongside of Dennis Marshall and David Perel, will be ready to lead us to the green for today's 4-hour race. I'm just trying to get a sense for the atmosphere now in the team garage area, because we've already said it. The job's not done. They've still got 4 hours of data to work through, but as the only Ferrari in the field, Neil, they will be thrilled to have got this done at least in qualifying.
Yeah, he's doing the classic debrief with his co-drivers, and it's crucial. Starting on pole, you know, depending on strategy, depending on driver changes, and when we get to the race in an hour's time, well, 2 hours, an hour and 45 minutes until we actually start the race itself, I believe. The time now to go through the data and to debrief is crucial.
Aber sowas von, den habe ich mir direkt gegriffen, als der hier aus dem Auto ausgestiegen. Thierry, first pole for you on the Nordschleife. How does it feel?
Well, our
quite nice.
German
of course,
TV colleagues are going to have a chat
that has gone into
with
it, so big thanks
Thierry
to Kondo and
Vermeulen.
Rinaldi. I think we were here.
Unfortunately, Neil, you're a man of many talents. Do you speak German? Can you live translate this for us as they talk?
They're speaking English, so I think we can listen.
And it's going towards the right direction. So big thanks to them, and it was a cool experience to drive the track without traffic and everything. It was so big thanks that I could do it.
Talk us a bit through this session at all. It was quite tricky on the Nordschleife. There was some cars involved in some accidents. How did it feel for you?
Yeah, it was the first lap of the day for me. So for sure, you know, the first lap you directly have to perform, and this is something really fun. But the track was a little bit dirty in some spots. Of course, it was wet this morning. Also some leaves and stuff, and then we had some cars which went off. So yeah, all in all, a bit tricky, but super fun.
Our commentator said you were not known especially for being a Nordschleifen expert when you arrived here. Now you said it was your first lap at all on this day, and then you put out 8 minutes, 0.10. I guess you're an expert now.
No, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but yeah, I think the car felt really good. It was a good lap, and that's what gave us the pole.
What's the strategy for the race? Are you allowed to do the race start now after this lap?
I'm not sure. I think we're going to see what is the best way to attack the race, but of course we will push for a good result.
All right. Thank you very much and congratulations. Ja, ich würde sagen, Eddie, Olli, ich glaube, das mit dem Übersetzen und dem Inhalt, das übernehmt ihr und damit zurück zu euch.
Well, very grateful that we got to hear exactly what Thierry Vermeulen was thinking there. I'm a little bit stunned as to his relative lack of experience, at least over the weekend, to go out there and put the performance together, Neil. Again, it just is a very impressive showing. I don't want to discredit David Jahn, though, who was only 1,000th of a second slower across 25 miles of qualifying.
Yeah, very impressive considering the gulf in experience between the two of them. And then there's, you know, almost a full second to third place, and then another full second to fourth. So that the sort of top 10 are divided by nearly five seconds in total. So yes, those gaps are not representative, and of course a lap time of the Nordschleife, apart from during qualifying, is not really what you're aiming for. You're aiming for a race win, and that's a long game over a 4-hour race.
So let's give you a rundown of how this top qualifying session has ended as we head into a brief parc fermé, and the teams will have to work through a brief inspection process as ever. It is Thierry Vermeulen for that Realized Condor Racing with Rinaldi Ferrari. An 8:10.275, but only 1,000th of a second quicker than David Jahn for the Motor Racing Pro-Am BMW. They'll make up the front row, while behind them, Christopher Haase in the Scherer Sport Audi. He'll be alongside of Thomas Preining in the Manthey Grello 911. Those two drivers found themselves only about 2 seconds off at the end, but the gaps continue to rise as you then go to Lucas Auer in the Mercedes-AMG Verstappen Racing entry. Behind them, another pair of Mercedes, actually, including Adam Christodoulou for Pro Sport. That's the number 26. And then the Schnitzel-Lahm Racing Mercedes, the number 11, down in 7th. The 48 Losch Motorsport by Black Falcon Porsche was 8th, with the Windward 2nd Mercedes, the Ravenol entered number 80 down in 9th, with Black Falcon's second car, the second of their Porsches, rounding out the top 10, and a total of about 4.2 seconds covering the front 5 rows of the starting grid. Behind them, the Haupt Racing Ford, the number 65, just in front of the Lamborghini Red Bull Team Abt, number 84. Mullner Motorsports, the Porsche 911 123, just in front of the best non-SB9 in top qualifying, Neil Verhagen in that BMW M Motorsports M3 Touring. 14th overall. They said they wanted a challenge for pole position. They've still got about 6 seconds to find if they want to do that next month. Just in front, though, of the best, second best of the BMWs, with Schubert Motorsports number 77, 15th, and then rolling through the rest of the top 20. Conrad Motorsports' Lamborghini, KCMG's Mercedes, Roro Racing's BMW, Juter Racing's Audi, and then the Door McLaren. That's the top 20. Other notable highlights, let's quickly just call out where the HWA Evos qualified. The 62 in front of the 61. Bruno Spengler qualified the 61. And about 8 seconds difference between them, about 30 seconds off the pace of the pole sitters. Remember, we didn't expect them to be challenging for pole position, but great to see those cars out on track and continuing to accrue valuable mileage, all ahead of the more mileage that lies in front of them, Neil. The 4 hours of running in front of us. And while we started top qualifying with grey clouds, the sun, in typical Nürburgring Nordschleife fashion, has started to poke its head out and make its presence known.
Yeah, there is sun dotted around the Nordschleife, so hopefully during the course of the next hour, sections of the circuit that were still quite damp will have a chance to dry out. And of course, for what it's worth, a racing line, if there is such a thing around here, will have dried out slightly as well with the running of all those cars in top qualifying. So yes, conditions looking good for the race, and hoping for a safe one.
As the results now on screen for those watching around the world. Remember, live in sound and vision. You can listen on RS1 for at least top qualifying. It's a busy weekend for our team. We've got some crew on site at Spa for the 24-hour series race. Yesterday we had IMSA at Long Beach. Ryan Marine is on site for us, but John Heindorf is at Imola getting ready for World Endurance Championship running for the first time in 2026, and that race starts right around the same time as ours. So if you're capable of watching multiple races at the same time, boy, are you in for an exciting Sunday. The gap between the SB9 class, remember, we did have yellows and slow zones impacting both laps, so it's really hard to get a true sense for where some of these teams may have slotted out. Remember, Nicky Thiem in the Trinity Solutions number 34 Aston Martin, he was quickest in qualifiers earlier today, the first part of on-track running. However, that may have also been impacted by the ability to go onto slicks later in the session, whereas Max Verstappen, Lucas Auer, they did not get the chance to do so. Finished qualifying a little bit further down the results sheet, but did end up in this top qualifying session inside of the top 5. We are going to be live on RS1 throughout the entirety of the day, by the way, so if you're listening, no matter where you are around the world, don't have to go far. But that's top qualifying in the books. Arjuna Kankipati alongside of Neil Cole for all of it, and we will see you later today for our 4 hours of running, the second of our Ravenel 8080 24-hour Nürburgring qualifier races. See you then.